Folks, I've got with me Nate Sipe. He's a member of the group by the name of Pert Near Sandstone. They're coming out with a new album, which I don't have. It's not out of time because that's one of the singles.
It is, yeah. Waiting Days is the name of the album.
And as you can see, it's got a beautiful design of an actual conifer in the middle of train tracks.
Hmm. Kind of an industrial scene.
Yeah. So, Nate, first thing that comes to mind is how did you guys actually come up with the band name?
Sure, yeah, it's a bit of a mouthful and it's confusing to some people, but it's a little bit of Midwestern gibberish in a way. Pert near means, pretty close to or almost there or nearby. And it was actually they named the band the one gig that they had prior to me joining the group. They just played at a cafe and they needed to come up with a band name quickly before the gig, and so they just decided Pert Near was kind of an old timey expression that their grandfathers had spoken when they were younger. They remember hearing it, and then the Sandstone is a vague reference to the Mississippi River bluffs, which is where we all grew up along the Mississippi River in Minneapolis and the northwest suburbs, where the river runs right through it. So It's Pert Near Sandstone. Again, it's just a little bit of gibberish, really, but it's stuck. I wonder if I had been in the band at the point, if I would have suggested something else or vetoed it, or just probably not cared, because none of us knew the band was going to become, reach any level of success. So it didn't matter at the time. Now we're stuck with it, and people either love it or hate it or embrace it, and we're kind of all of those things ourselves from day to day.
I've listened to the whole album, and it's actually quite interesting because bluegrass tends to fringe in along the lines of country / more blues than anything else.
Sure.
But in the band, how many members are you? If I remember correctly, the photo that was given was like 4 members.
Yeah, there's 4 members of the core group, and we have lately, the last couple of years, we've also had the fiddler Chris Forsberg, who's been joining us, and he was from a local band here in Minnesota called Kind Country, which isn't playing very often anymore. So he came on board with us, and he's been a good old friend. We've known him for a really long time, and he actually, aside from being classically trained on the violin, he kind of cut his teeth learning fiddle by listening to our early recordings. So he was really a natural shoe-in. He knows our style and our sound, and band rapport with him is really good. And then we have some other guests that occasionally are with us. We try to include a clogger occasionally, both in the recordings, and there were years where we traveled with a clogger at every show, and we've recently decided to kind of break that up a little bit and just to variate it and leave space for additional guests. So we've had some good friends play electric guitar with us recently, and percussion and other things. So. But I'd say a group typically is 5 piece as we go traveling around now.
Okay, apart from you, Nate, and the fiddler, who else makes up the band?
Yeah, then there's Jay Lenz, who plays guitar, and Kevin Kniebel, who plays banjo, and like clawhammer banjo, he plays an older kind of Appalachian style of banjo, and then Justin Brune, who plays upright bass.
Which, folks, Justin Brune was supposed to be here tonight, but Nate was given the opportunity. Justin is apparently from Canadian roots, from what I've been told.
Yeah, yep, he's got some French-Canadian heritage, as do I. I
really?
come from the Richard, the Richards from Quebec. Married into the Quinn family lineage, so yeah, French-Canadian and Irish, that's part of my heritage.
Well, that's nice. See, folks, Canadians are pretty much anywhere.
That's true. Well, especially when you're from Minnesota, I think the rest of the U.S. kind of considers us Canadians anyway. So, we're that close to the border.
Oh dear.
But yeah, Justin is currently watching the Twins battling the Houston Astros at the Twin Stadium in downtown Minneapolis, rooting for the home team while they're in the playoffs.
Oh, word, there we go.
Yeah,
Now, the album itself, uh, when did you guys actually find the opportunity to start creating this album? Because with COVID, well, three-quarters of the people were doing write-ups. They were
right.
doing file share, collaboration, long distance when distancing was a requirement. But how did you guys come about planning and designing and mixing and planning on releasing this album on October 20th?
Sure. Yeah, so a couple of these songs were leftover songs from the Rising Tide album, our last release. And that was actually, we decided to release that in the middle of the pandemic closure. Our Blue Ox Music Festival that we help organize and curate, uh, that year had to be canceled, but we had the idea to do a virtual festival and just have a select number of bands, including us, be on the festival grounds without anybody else there and do a live presentation of our album release show. So that essentially carried us. I mean, it was an awful idea. I mean, it was a terrible time to, release an album because we couldn't tour on it or anything. And but it was really cathartic. Felt really good to put new music out to the world and kind of reflect our stance and just putting new music out there. Adding some positivity to a pretty troubling time for a lot of people. But that carried us through the closure for the most part. We were able to get a lot of use of those songs, the new album. And so when we were able finally to get back together and start playing shows again and go back on the road, we just sort of pieced together enough songs to record an album.
Okay.
And typically how we operate as a band, we independently write our own. There's 4 songwriters in the band, so we'll usually independently write a handful of songs, and then we'll have a show and tell type of practice where we run through the songs and we kind of select the ones that are stronger or we all like better, and we'll kind of focus on that. We usually try for 10 songs, and for years we've had albums with 14 songs. So this one I believe is 11 songs. So a little bit over our par, but yeah, I think all the songs turned out really well and kind of meet each other pretty well, despite us all having several songwriters and different styles. I think when it comes out in the wash, it's all Pert Near music. It all is pretty cohesive in its sound and style, and we've come to know each other as songwriters and what to expect instrumentally from each other in performance in the studio. So we kind of know what we're going for and what we're getting with each album.
I know that the band had many releases. If I remember correctly, there's almost 10 albums, if not more, currently available as discographies.
Yeah, this will be our Waiting Days is our 8th studio album. And then we have a live album and several singles, and even actually one of our very first albums was a live album that we compiled just to have something to sell to people at shows as we were trying to make our way around the state of Minnesota and then around the country.
Okay. With this new album, are you planning on doing any vinyl with it, or is it just purely streaming and CDs?
Yeah, so there's a vinyl production duplication manufacturing plant in Minnesota, actually, in Minneapolis. Nice. So yeah, we were able to go and physically watch the vinyl being pressed and printed, and we each hand wrote several copies of our songs,
Hmm.
So there's lyric sheets that we've snuck into several of the vinyls as well. So there'll be a select few people that when they open up their vinyl and pull out their record, they'll have a handwritten lyric sheet along with it. So
Oh, you gotta love that. And it's like the Willy Wonka surprise for people that love your music.
yeah, the golden ticket.
Um, so
We'll have to maybe think of a prize, like you get a free show of your choice if you pull the lyric sheet or something.
VIP meet with the group for a barbecue held at a local
Yeah.
restaurant. um,
Yep.
so right now, with the fact that we're post COVID, a lot of the bands are doing their tours. They're mostly centering on in the province. Well, here in Canada, it's the province that they're in, or the local city
Okay.
or province over. For you guys, how are you planning this new tour for this new album?
With a lot of hopes and prayers, and no, we're kind of trying to get back the wheels rolling again, trying to get back out across the country. We just stretched down into Tennessee. We've gotten into Montana. Our tour circuit is gradually widening, and so we're heading back out to the West Coast now. We're going Pacific Northwest. We'll be out there in about a week. I think next Thursday. Next Thursday, I'll be flying out to Bend, Oregon, to meet up with the
Okay.
band. And yeah, and so we're
Hello, hello. I lost you. Hold on.
normal and try back to touring like they used to before. I think us, along with a lot of other bands, realized during the COVID closure how important home life is, however, and connection to our families and loved ones. And so, as much as we want to hit the road, flying down the road, burning rubber, we also realize that life balance is an extremely important thing. And we've always done a pretty good job of that. And I think now more than ever, we are really trying to balance being at home and being on the road, and making sure both of those are healthy activities. And so, yeah, we're not killing ourselves, but we're definitely going to be getting out and trying to spread the word about the new album, and sell some vinyl, sell some lyric sheets.
Nice.
And
Uh,
yeah.
so, as a human being, you're not just a musician. So you've got dreams, aspirations, and you also do family business.
Hmm.
But what do you do yourself? Since I only have you, I'm going to ask you what you do as for hobbies, if any.
Yeah, well, I love hiking. I have a forest entrance right out my back door. I live in a small community that is adjacent to some beautiful forests and creeks. So walking with my dogs is probably my number one hobby, and my dogs are, make pretty dang sure that I'm sticking with that and getting them outside for walks. On the side, I love, music is both a career and a passion. I love playing various instruments and recording new music that Pert Near probably wouldn't ever record. Variety of genres and variety of instruments that I would probably never play on stage, maybe with anyone ever. But like steel guitar has been my new hobby lately, and it's
Oh,
pedal
nice.
steel, both pedal steel and Hawaiian steel guitar, and they're both difficult instruments. So maybe someday I'll get there where I'll be performing them. Until then, I'm just recording in my home studio. But yeah, other than that, I have a house plant collection. Watering plants is a big is my daily meditation.
Well, that's good.
Yeah.
And last question would be basically a weird one because it's like it's off the wall. But what would be your favorite dish?
Ooh, my favorite dish. That's a good question. Um, I just before we started this call, I was finishing a batch of wild rice, chicken wild rice soup, And that's been kind of a staple of mine growing up at home. You know, the wild rice is harvested natively in Minnesota, so
Oh,
it was
nice.
always a staple. You know, wild rice casseroles and at every holiday, and this creamy chicken wild rice soup is, I'd have to say, one of my favorites, and not just because I can smell it from where I'm sitting and I'm hungry. it's it's lifelong staple.
Oh, thank you so much for taking the time to actually do this interview, Nate.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for sharing the word about our music.
We hope that your tour will go well and that your travels for you to go meet them is going to be safe.
Thank
So,
you.
with that said, folks, this is the end of the interview. Thank you so much, Nate, again.
Yes, take care. Be well. Thank you.